But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. You know, they can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. Yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. I think also just don't be afraid of new arenas. You know, you can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands, and just make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. Not being motivated personally by money is not the same as saying that I think SpaceX shouldn't make money. In fact, it's very important that SpaceX is profitable, or we will not be able to earn the money necessary to continue future developments. It's like the Nike slogan, just do it. That's, just showing up is half the battle. You got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. But you also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't. It's easy to get high in your own supply. You've got to not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. You go to the very basic laws of physics, the things which we believe to be extremely well demonstrated. In other words, the reason they call it a law is that no one has ever demonstrated an exception to that, ever. As Edison said, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I think it's really a mindset. You have to decide, we're going to try to do things differently. Well, provided that they're better. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be different and better. But I think you just have to sort of decide. Let's think beyond the normal stuff. There's this great holy grail potential in the future. You have to stay grounded in the short term. So because if you don't do things that pay the bills, you're not going to achieve the ultimate long-term objective. But it's nice to have that sort of holy grail long-term potential out there as an inspiration for coming to work. No, I'm a volunteer. I don't need the money. There's nothing. It's not like I'm sitting here saying I wish I could buy such and such a thing. I could buy it. I get paid minimum wage. Actually, I don't even get overtime. I think the first is, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night. 7 days a week, all the time. Work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100. You'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I think too is you got to make sure that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. And I go back to what I was saying earlier, where if you're a new company, unless it's like some new industry or new market if it's an untapped market, then you have more ability the standard is lower for your product or service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and they say, why would you buy it as a consumer? You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. So a lot of times entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better. And it can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better. The other thing I'd say is that if you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. Then I'd say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. And I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expending, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts. And then I think the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. You don't have, you don't have kids, but as you get older, your obligations increase. And once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold.
Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. And then
a lot of work.
all those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
Okay. I like your work ethic.
Thank you, Slowden. Just do it. Just showing up is half the battle. You got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. But you also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't. It's easy to get high in your own supply. Not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. Don't be afraid of new arenas. You can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands and make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. If you study engineering and you figure out how to design new things, then it's relatively easy to start a company. You just need to get a few like-minded people with you, and then focus on creating a prototype, a compelling prototype, as soon as possible. And then, there's a strong venture capital industry in this country that will give you funding to take things to the next level, and that's all there is to it. And you might, if try it a few times, you may or may not succeed. But I think sometimes people fear starting a company too much. You have to say, really, what's the worst that could go wrong? You're not going to starve to death. You're not going to die of exposure. What's the worst that could go wrong?
So when everybody leaves, it's just Elon sitting at home, brushing his teeth, just a bunch of ideas bouncing around your head.
Yeah. All the time.
When did you realize that that's not the case with most people?
I think when I was, 5 or 6 or something. I thought I was insane.
Why'd you think you were insane?
Because it was clear that other people did not, their mind wasn't exploding with ideas all the time.
They weren't expressing it. they weren't talking about it all the time. And you realize by the time you were 5 or 6, like, oh, they're probably not even getting this thing that I'm getting.
No. It was just strange. It was like, I'm strange. That was my conclusion.
That was the summer of '95. I had no money whatsoever. I was working, doing research in Silicon Valley on a completely different subject and trying to start this company at the same time. And when it came time to decide, do I want to do graduate studies or do I want to start this company? And I decided to start the company. I had no money. As a graduate student, I would have received a scholarship and a stipend and so forth. In starting the company, I had nothing. I had no income source. So we found that an office was actually cheaper than an apartment in Silicon Valley. So we got this dinky little office that had a leaky roof. It was just the nastiest place you can imagine.
And you lived in it too?
And I lived in it too and showered at the YMCA. This lasted for about 3 or 4 months. And the reason we chose this office, in addition to it being really cheap, was that there was an internet service provider on the floor below. So we were able to get really cheap internet access by drilling a hole in the floor and connecting to their server directly.
To a high-profile MBA school and then kind of parachutes in as the leader, but they don't actually know how things work. You know, they can be good at, say, PowerPoint presentations or something like that, and they can present well, but they don't actually know how things work. They're kind of like just not aware of what's really needed for, to make great products. People look at MBA school as like, I want to parachute into being the boss instead of earning it, and like I don't think that's good.
Why even begin?
When something is important enough, you do it even if it's not in your favor.
How much of your personal fortune have you poured into this?
$100 million.
$100 million into something that you did not believe would work at the beginning.
Yes.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. If that fourth launch hadn't worked, that would have been it. We would have not had the resources to mount a fifth.
You couldn't have gone out at that point.
Yes, death would have been, I think, inevitable because we did not have the resources to mount a fifth launch.
This is a tricky business.
I
was living in the factory for 3 years straight. That was my primary residence. For a while there, I was just sleeping under my desk, which is out in the open in the factory, and for an important reason. And it was damn uncomfortable sleeping on that floor. And always, when I woke up, I'd smell like metal dust.
Choose your team.
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. It's
what do you ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important because the people that really solve the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
Married to a man who became extremely successful. And as I watched him rise, I noticed two things. He worked very hard, much harder than your average bear. And he said no a lot. He said no to people who wanted his time and attention and energy. He said no in a way that protected his resources so that he could channel them toward his own goals. And I realized that behind every no is a deeper yes to whatever it is that you do want. No is like a bright line that, when used properly, marks off where you end and others begin.
What makes you happy?
Well, I think if things are going well with family and things are going well at work, then I'm happy. Okay. If either one of them is not going well, then I'm, well, either half unhappy or completely unhappy. Okay. I expect to receive a car that I've just bought, which is called the McLaren F1. There are 62 McLarens in the world, and I will own one of them.
It's $1 million for a car.
Wow, I can't believe it's actually here. It's pretty wild, man. This is definitely very cool. I like it a lot.
Congratulations.
Just 3 years ago, I was showering at the Y and sleeping on the office floor. And now, obviously I've got a $1 million car and quite a few creature comforts. It's just a moment in my life. All clear. My values may have changed, but I'm not consciously aware of my values having changed.
My fear is that we become spoiled brats. That we lose a sense of appreciation and perspective. It's the perfect car for Silicon Valley, it really is.
There it is, gentlemen, the fastest car in the world. The mistake in general that I've made and I'm trying to correct for that is to put too much of a weighting on somebody's talent and not enough on their personality. And I've made that mistake several times. In fact, then I would say, oh, gee, I'm not going to make that mistake again, and then I would make it again. And I think it actually matters whether somebody has a good heart. It really does. And I've made the mistake of thinking that sometimes it's just about the brain. Aerospace degree.
How did you get the expertise to be the chief technology officer of a rocket ship company?
I do have a physics background. That's helpful as a foundation. And then I read a lot of books and talked to a lot of smart people.
You're self-taught?
Yeah. Well, self-taught, yes, meaning I don't have an aerospace degree.
So how did you go about acquiring the knowledge?
Well, like I said, I read a lot of books, talked to a lot of people, and have a great team.
Former NASA astronaut Garrett Reisman spent 3 months aboard the space station and flew on one of the final shuttle missions. You could have easily gotten a job at Boeing or at Lockheed, but you came here.
If you had a chance to go back in time and work with Howard Hughes when he was creating TWA, if you had a chance to be there at that moment when it was the dawn of a brand new era, wouldn't you want to do that? I mean, that's why I'm here.
I'd take a self-taught innovator over a rigid academic any day.
One of the mistakes that smart engineers make, one of the biggest traps for smart engineers is optimizing a thing that shouldn't exist.
Yeah. So they'll just sit there and spin on that thing that's just like, why do we even have this in the first place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So because when you go through college, like studying physics and engineering, I studied physics, you have to answer the question that the professor gives you. You don't get to say, this is the wrong question.
Right. Yeah.
But in reality, we have far more degrees. When you're in reality, you have all the degrees of freedom of reality. And so the first thing you should say is, this question is wrong.
Who is the real president-elect, do you think?
Donald Trump won, I believe.
Democratic lawmakers in Washington are calling Elon Musk President Musk now, and they're saying Donald Trump is the vice president or the head of communications.
What's? Wait a second. No one said that.
Really? Have you not watched and paid attention to the
Absolutely
news?
not. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing during my day so I can try and get a better life and get ahead.
Okay, do you have your phone with you?
I do.
Why don't you Google right now?
Yes, tell me.
President Musk and see what comes up.
No. But that's already a loaded question, you realize.
Tell me, give me the sources.
Axios, Business Insider.
Oh.
We don't trust any of these. The common man doesn't trust any of this.
Keep going.
ABC News, Washington Post, New York Times, The Atlantic.
Oh!
I don't trust any of these.
Oh!
I don't trust any of them.
Okay.
I don't trust any of these. We're the common man. We don't trust any of these. No one trusts the government. No one trusts the common news. We don't trust any of that anymore.
Well,
Independent news, we are the ones that own the news now. People trust me. They don't trust MSNBC. Because I care, and I'm actually one of them.
I can't disagree with you.
Okay.
Then. I get a lot of people coming to me saying, I only watch, I don't watch corporate media.
No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. It hurts. This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then Tesla, good chance Tesla would die. When my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day. And I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, like, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say, particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I mean, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
I was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
You ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. It's good to think in terms of the physics approach, or first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method. Then it's just you have to apply a lot of hours to actually working. So the way I generally do it is I'll be working at SpaceX on Monday, and then Monday night fly to the Bay Area, spend Tuesday and Wednesday in the Bay Area, then at Tesla, and then fly back on Wednesday night, spend Thursday and Friday at SpaceX. In the last several months, then I would fly back here on a Saturday and either spend Saturday and Sunday at Tesla or spend Saturday at Tesla and Sunday at SpaceX.
Just showing up is half the battle. Just, you got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. But you also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't, it's easy to get high in your own supply. You've got to not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not. Or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. Yeah, don't be afraid of new arenas. You can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands, and just make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. But I think people can choose to be not ordinary.
Well, I think if you want the future to be good, you must make it so. Take action to make it good, and it will be.